Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, here we go. Your dial is set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us. Jason, thank you for engineering the broadcast at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli, and Guineith Isaacs is with us. She's live in Australia. And I was thinking about who we are. And for a large part of who USA Prepares happens to be, we happen to be farmers, a bunch of us. For example, Monday, Dr. Norm Shealy, he lives on a farm. He raises beef and buffalo, and they are beefalo. That's what he does. He gardens. At 88 years old, he's out raising food in his garden. Tuesdays, Rich Sheben, living off-grid. Hunts, fishes, raises his own food, cuts his own firewood, heats his own cabin. Wednesdays, Guineith Isaacs, lives on a farm, does the same thing, raises animals, gardens, and off-grid. Thursdays, sometimes it's Rich, sometimes it's me. I live on a farm. We raise beef, Black Angus beef. And I was thinking about how much beef the Finelli farm raises per year, and I'm thinking it's close to 50,000 pounds. So there are takers, there are consumers, and there are producers. And the interesting thing about USA Prepares is pretty much all of us are producers. Isn't that interesting? So in addition to that, we share our thoughts and experiences as to what we see, what's happening, why it's happening, and what to do about it. That's who we are. And that makes us different from every other broadcast. Most broadcasts are about what's happening politically, what people read about, and they present their views on what they think is happening. That's what most broadcasts happen to be about. Well, an interesting thing is the president has been banned from Twitter. And now, YouTube. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the president's speech being limited by technology, by people who run these big tech companies? Can you imagine that? Well, here we are. Here we are. And some people think the election has been stolen. I don't think it was a fair election. I think pretty much everybody at USA Prepares believes that it was not a fair election. But it wasn't the first like this. There were many. As a matter of fact, the 35th president of the United States, when he was elected/selected, his father, who was a big player on Wall Street, he made his fortune on Wall Street, and then he made his fortune as a criminal, as a bootlegger. You know who I'm talking about. His name was John Fitzgerald Kennedy. He was the 35th president of the United States. He was elected in 1960. He ran against Richard Milhouse Nixon. And who was involved and how did he win? Well, it's believed by many people far and wide that his rise to being selected as the winner of the contest for president of the United States was largely instrumental by the mob. It has been widely reported that the mob and Joseph Kennedy, the former president's father, had enough money to pay pay the mob, who in turn paid off the sheriffs in Illinois, and that was a critical state back then for this election. His father paid off the sheriffs, or paid off the mob, who then in turn used the money to pay off the sheriffs who counted the results of the votes. Isn't that interesting? 60, so the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Wow. That was a long time ago. 60 years ago, right? 60 years ago. So the current boondoggle, it was not the first. And I don't believe the John Fitzgerald Kennedy, was the first either. So elections have been bought and sold. And here we are. We just happen to be in the current one. And now people are frosted. Now people catch on. Because the internet is one of the means of communication. So anybody with a keyboard can get on the internet and espouse his or her views. And they are. And so people in the media have been reporting on this. Well, now they've been threatened. So the media has been threatened by Cumulus. All of the talk show hosts have been put on notice that they will not talk about it, else their contract will be terminated. Yep. And the president has been silenced by Twitter and now by YouTube. And I think that's what Guineith wants to talk about today. Welcome, Guineith.
Hello, Vincent. How are you this morning? I think we've already answered that question, haven't we?
Yeah. Frosted comes to mind. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, we've been. I don't know about the rest of Australia, but I've been watching the goings on in the United States with rapt attention, although not necessarily delighted. I think that it's a real kettle of fish that you've got over there, as they would have said back in Joe Kennedy's day. It's I think that anyone who thinks that America is not headed for or in a civil war at this very moment really doesn't know what they're talking about. It's a mess, in short. And when it's really amazing, because I'm still getting people emailing me who are convinced that Donald Trump will be installed on the 20th. He's not going to be installed on the 20th. He's not going to be installed ever. But this is the strength of what's called a Nigerian scam, which means that you get pulled into a set of lies by somebody who's a very clever talker, and then they manage to take something from you, and then when it comes out that you've been lied to, then you can't psychologically admit. It's so devastating to your psyche that you can't admit to yourself that you've been lied to. And you'll keep believing the lie, even into infinity. You'll just keep believing it. And I'm sure that there will be people, even after Joe Biden is putting his jackboot foot on America's neck and dragging people out of their homes, that Donald Trump is really still going to be installed for a second term. He's just waiting for the right time. And even if they manage to do something like publicly execute Donald Trump in the middle of Times Square, they won't believe it. God forbid that should happen, by the way. But this is the sort of thing that happens in communist countries. And in communist takeovers, although probably what I think they would rather do is put him into a prison cell next to Julian Assange and, kind of just throw the key away. I think that that's more the plan that they have for Donald Trump. But even if they executed him in the middle of Times Square, then you would have people who wouldn't even believe it then, who would claim that it was a body double and that, Donald Trump's still going to be installed as the president, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People need to let go of the whole Q thing. It was always a scam. It was always a very clever psychological operation. And me personally, I never bought into it. I would have Q people contacting me, and I would just politely try and steer the conversation around that topic. You know what I mean? And what they do, I'll tell you how I trap mice here on the farm, because, one animal that we have here on the farm is chickens, and because we have chickens, we have a grain stash, and anytime you have a grain stash on a farm, you're going to have mice. But I'll tell you how I trap mice. I have a mouse trap, and it's one of these live kill mouse traps. It has a little spring door. The mouse stands on it, depresses the door, and it can crawl inside, but it can't get back out because the door springs shut behind it. And I put peanut butter on the outside of the door, on the little ramp that leads up into the trap, and inside the trap. And so the mouse eats the little bit of peanut butter outside the trap. And then eventually its body weight presses down the little ramp, and it sees a big lump of peanut butter inside the trap, and it walks into the trap. That's what the whole Q thing is like, The thing of, the pedophile cartels, well, they're definitely a fact of history, and I know that for sure. Firsthand, I know that those government pedophile cartels are a true fact of history. They're incredibly evil, and they absolutely tied into government. They even go into the things like the UFO thing, and I'm pretty sure that that there's something going on with the UFO thing. Okay, and I know that you agree there as well. And they go on to this fact and the other fact, and they say that it's all related back to Q. And that's where the fatal error is. It's not all related back to Q. They're all facts that are historical facts, and they're artificially tied back to a single source. That's the peanut butter on the mousetrap, okay, is tying all of these things that are historically and actually true facts and tying them back to a single source. And the thing is, you don't buy into, because the thing is that there genuinely is a Q level of clearance. Okay, I know that for a fact because I know a lot of people who have this level of clearance. But people who have this level of clearance, I know them, and they're not like the people that I have met who are in the Q movement. I can hear music.
All right, we'll be right back with Guineith. Yeah, we'll be right back with Guineith Isaacs live in Australia. Class, I've been talking about the Second American Revolution combined with the Second Civil War for a better part of this year. And I said it's here. And it has already started. And I think that others are beginning to say some similar kinds of things. Guineith, you pay attention to what's happening on the Internet. Do you think we were among the first to say that we have already begun the Second Civil War combined with the Second American Revolution?
Yeah. I can't think of anybody who was saying it before you were. I think that one of the other early people was probably Alex Jones. But other than that, oh yeah, and Jeff Barrick, the dollar vigilante, he's been saying it for a while. But I think that you were even saying it before they were. But, you know, a lot of people are still, like I say, there's it's called a normalcy bias. It actually is a psychological effect. It has actually a psychological name. And that is, people want to think like that the world is going to be as it always was, or that if there's a deviation from that, if something happens, then the world's going to go back to what it once was. But what we're saying, what I'm saying, what I have been saying for a long time, is that the world's not going to go back to normal. It's absolutely not. I've been calling it the fall of Rome, and I've been saying, I have been saying as well, calling it the Second American Revolution or the Second American Civil War. And there's no getting out of it. Okay, because everywhere in the world where communists get in, they follow a playbook. They're actually not that intelligent. I mean, if you look at the likes of Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi, they're hugely evil, and they are really, really quite bad people, but they're not the sharpest tools in the box. And if people actually knew what they were doing, knew their history, knew the communist playbook, that'd actually be really, really easy to defeat, you know? But people don't. They don't know their history. They don't know how communists operate. The only reason that Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton and that whole nest of demon vipers can get away with what they get away with is that people don't know their history and they don't know the communist playbook, and they believe whatever the box in the corner tells them. And that's a really, really dangerous way to live your life. They've forgotten how to think for themselves. And if they would only think for themselves, they would realize that all is not well with the world, that Donald Trump is not going to be installed as the president, and that, oh my gosh, that they have got a world of hurt ahead of them, and that the best thing that they can do is, by the way, I do not at this point advise that anybody should go to any public demonstration, because all that they are going to do at this time is take a note of your face on the security cameras. They're going to pick up the location of your cell phone, and then you're going to get a knock on the door in the middle of the night, and you're going to get dragged out and have your face planted on the pavement when you're in your pajamas. And then you're going to get put in the back of some vehicle and taken off to a place that only God knows where it is. And probably you will never ever be seen again. That is what is happening, going to happen. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen because it's part of the communist playbook. You need to stay at home, and you need to, if you've got a farm, that's all the better. But and you need to mind your own business, and you need to be prepared to defend that farm if people come to the gate. Now,
I've got some comments about what you've said when we come back from this break. Guineith Isaacs is with us. We're going to the bottom of the hour. At the end of World War II, from the years 1945 through 1949, there were trials at Nuremberg, Germany. There were 13 of them. And the purpose of these trials were to seek justice. And the defendants were Nazi Party officials, the socialists, and high-ranking German military officers. Included were lawyers, doctors, and industrialists. And they were indicted on such charges as crimes against humanity and peace. Adolf Hitler was never brought to trial. But some lawyers were. And these lawyers were involved in finding people guilty who were not guilty. They were involved in sentencing people who they thought were mentally feeble to forced sterilization. You could volunteer to be sterilized if you were deemed mentally feeble, or you could be brought in by force and be operated on, but it was going to happen. The lawyers, these high-ranking lawyers in Nazi Germany, were also involved in sentencing people who were not towing the party line to concentration camps. What Guineith is saying has happened before. And some people are still alive that happened during their lives. So Adolf Hitler decided that he was going to eliminate people who opposed his point of view, his policies, and he would have them removed and either executed, sentenced by these judges, or sent to concentration camps. That's what happened. Now, there are a number of people who have been in communication with me who said it's happening again, and it's going to happen with the new administration. That is their fear, that people will be hauled off, never to be seen of again. So for those of you who think that it didn't happen, I have a homework assignment for you. I've got it in my hand. It's a video. It's riveting. 1961. Spencer Tracy, Burt Lancaster, Richard Winmark, Marlene Dietrich, Judy Garland, Montgomery Clift. It's titled Judgment at Nuremberg. If you watch this, you will be spellbound. It is brilliantly done. And what you will take away is probably this, that the judges who have sentenced these people to horrific torture and execution and sterilization, well, they were just doing it because everybody else was doing it. And, Adolf Hitler said, you will do this or your life as a judge will be unpleasant. So to save your own skin, we suggest that you sentence people to death, sterilization, and a nice long stay in a concentration camp. If you don't, your family will probably suffer. So what do you want to do? So what happened is people in Germany went along. Situational ethics, situational morality. Well, everybody's doing it, so I guess it's okay. Even the defense for the judges said, well, wait a minute. If you're going to sentence these defendants, these judges who have sent people to their death, concentration camps, and forced sterilization, what about the American companies? Now, they weren't named, but they had names like General Motors, who was supplying the Nazi machine with equipment before 1941. What about IBM, who was supplying equipment to the Third Reich? And other companies. What about them? IG Farben. They were involved in Zyklon B, the gas that was used in the gas chambers or showers, if you want to call them that. Now, there are a lot of people who say how many were killed. That's really unknown. Some people say the number was exaggerated. What if it was just one? I think that's too many. The point of all this is big business, including the Bush family. Yes, President Bush, those guys, was involved with the Nazi regime. Big business was involved because it's big business. So here we are, and we've got the stolen election or the bought election or the subverted election or the taken election or the invalid election of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. We've got the same thing here. And people have asked, who are you going to vote for? I said, I'm not going to vote. I didn't vote. Why would I vote? Why would I vote for a predetermined outcome? Why would I do that? Why would I waste my time? And I told you I wasn't going to vote. And I told you my vote didn't count. And guess what? I guess you figured out that I was right. My vote didn't count. And neither did yours. So, here we are. We are in the beginning stages of the Second American Revolution combined with the Second Civil War. I suggest that you get whatever you need to get to ride this thing out. I suggest that you keep your head down, as Guineith said. And my dad, and please don't think this is racist because it's not meant to be. It's just fact. My dad said to me, and I don't know where he got this information from, and my dad was not a racist. He had black friends. And so did I. One of my best friends in high school was a black man. He came to this country in seeking an education for his tribe in Africa. He was the Prince of Dahomey. And in the 1970s, my dad said to me, during your lifetime, a black man will be president. And that will be the end of the United States. Now, he didn't mean it as a black man was going to mismanage the country to the extent where it'll fall apart. I think he meant that as a mile marker. Kind of saying like, you know, when you get to the Red Roof restaurant, turn left. That's where it is. Or turn right. As a way marker. He was saying that once that happens, that is the beginning of the end, and it'll be soon. How did he know that in the 70s? How did he know? I don't know. Was it his black general friend? A U.S. Army general who told him? I don't know. I never got that information, and I can't ask my dad because he's no longer with us. So, to put an exclamation point on what Guineith Isaacs said, don't go to public demonstrations. Big tech is involved with tracking you, along with big government. There's facial recognition, with and without masks. You're being tracked by Twitter, by Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates. Dump Facebook. Dump Twitter. Don't communicate your political positions, your views, that can be viewed as inflammatory, incendiary, or violent. Don't do that. Why would you do that? You know you're being tracked. At USA Prepares, we do not, let me say that a different way. We do not condone burning down buildings, destroying buildings, businesses, and property. We do not condone that. If you watched the assigned homework, Jericho, which I've assigned for years, there is a scene there where the mayor of Jericho says, you know, the town wants to blow up the bridge. the bridge to Jericho, a small town in Kansas. They want to blow it up because they're going to be attacked very soon. And if they blow up the bridge, it'll make it really hard for the attackers to come through. The mayor said the equivalent of, have you lost your mind? If you blow up that bridge, that's our only way out of town. That's the same bridge that we use. So for those of you who are thinking about burning down public buildings, do you think that you have the wherewithal to rebuild them? I don't think you do. Don't do it. Don't burn down public buildings. Don't burn down stores. Not one of us could make a window for a storefront that gets broken during these riots. We don't have the ability to make a glass window. Don't do it. I won't be part of it. And you know that I can't believe that people were encouraged to go to Washington. And they did. What a dumb thing to do. I can't believe it. What a dumb thing to do. Go to Washington, D.C. It's like going to a foreign country and you have no rights. You're being tracked. You're being monitored. Your cell phones get shut down. And you go, oh, what happened? How come my cell phone doesn't work? You have to realize that the other team has the ability to shut down the internet. Barry demanded the kill switch for the internet. Now, why would he do that? Because that's your source for information. Without that, what's left? Well, I guess that would be the mainstream media, right? Whatever they want to tell you then comes through if over the airwaves, digital TV, over the air, if the internet's down. And let me tell you this, if the internet's down, Vinny won't be heard on the radio. And hardly will anybody else. I didn't plan on talking about this, but here we are. Years ago, I was asked to go to Washington, D.C. with a broadcaster. He was getting a bunch of people together, and he wanted to get his position known to some of the selected alleged representatives. The mission was, listen to what we have to say. Well, he took donations, asked for donations from his listening audience. By the way, he's on the air right now. Not with Genesis Communications Network. And, by the way, we're ahead of him in rankings, in case you're wondering. And he decided that he was going to do this and get people interested in going to Washington. He got donations. And I guess he got to talk to a couple, maybe three at the most, aides to alleged representatives. The adventure cost $35,000. 10% of that was for breakfast for almost 100 people years ago. Have you ever spent $35 for breakfast? And then the coup de grace was they rented the National Press Club and they showed a movie, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. Now I want you to think about that. $35,000, 100 people, they watch a movie and have breakfast. What I'm telling you is if you think that your money is being used for valuable purposes when you donate it, I suggest you think about that story I just told you. I just went to his website, and there's a way you can donate to him. Can you imagine that? There are a whole bunch of broadcasters that are asking you for your hard-earned money. If you think the money that you send these people is being used the way you would want it to be used, I suggest you consider what I just told you. USA Prepares does not accept money from anybody. Not from advertisers, from nobody. We don't have an agenda that asks you for money. We're all volunteers. Me, everybody. We spend our own money to be on the air. Our own money. We take it from other things that we could be doing with it and use it to be on the air. I got a call from a guy who listens to another network, and he said, Vinny, I want to send you some money. I really like what you say. I don't like most of the broadcasts that I used to listen to on the other network or another network. I don't like them. They yell at the callers. They're mean to the callers. They beat up the callers for not donating. I want to send you some money because you don't do that. And I said, you can't. He said, no, I want to send you some money. I said, you can't do it. We don't accept it. We don't. So our agenda is different. It is to teach. It is to help you become a better person if you want to be. It is to help educate you, to help you think differently, help you think outside the box, teach you things you weren't taught in school. That's what we do. And in that line of thinking, I got a call this morning from Rich Sheben, and he asked me if he could have half of tomorrow. And I said, well, I had planned to teach 2 hours from my book, things that I think people need to know. Tricks of the trade, tips from my unpublished, unfinished, unorganized, not available for sale book. It'll probably never be available for sale. And he said the situation in the United States is so dire, I'm paraphrasing, that he would like some time. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I will just start the broadcast and then I'll sit back and I'll come back for hour number 2. But I don't even think I'm going to do that. I think what I'll do is I'll just tell Rich Sheben, take the first hour and I'll just show up for the second hour. I think that's what I'm going to do. So here we are. People have lost their minds. They have been following leadership that I don't think they should follow blindly. They should be thinking about exactly who they're listening to and why they're listening. Are they listening to facts or are they listening to opinions? And going to Washington and going to public displays of protest, I think it's nice to protest, but not today. Not today with surveillance. There is a massive, massive, massive roundup going on in the United States. And who are they rounding up? Everybody they can find who was in the Capitol. Yep. Gwyneth, any quick comments? I'm going to be quiet for the most of the next hour. Any comments before we go into the top of the hour break on what I've just said?
Yeah, I would just absolutely agree with you that people, this isn't the time to be demonstrating anything. You just got to keep your head low at the moment.
Yeah. I think about if you want to expound upon that for during the next hour. Guineith and I will be right back. She's live. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. She's a farmer. She lives off-grid, and she is someone who pays very close attention to the news and has her ear to the ground and her eyes wide open and is watching and listening and analyzing and researching events that are happening in the United States, worldwide, and in Australia. As a farmer class, we have to do that. We have to pay attention to the weather. We have to pay attention to the economy because our livelihoods depend on it. The decisions that we make directly impact our farms. It's not like making a mistake if you're a little person in a corporation and, it's a little mistake is a little mistake and it gets absorbed by the big machine. Little mistakes are big mistakes on farms. Dates, weather, planting, plowing, fertilizing, those expenditures. You make a couple mistakes and you might have just sunk the farm. Well, Guineith and I believe, both believe that demonstrating in the District of Criminals in today's environment is reckless. It's reckless behavior because you are being monitored, surveilled, spied upon, and the data is being cataloged and stored in repositories for future prosecution. I'm not suggesting that anyone do anything illegal. I'm just saying that this happened before. In Nazi Germany, people were selected for special treatment based on their political views. And do you really think that the current president of the United States is going to be around in a couple of weeks to help you out? Do you really think that? When the new people occupy the White House, do you think that they're going to be happy with your political views to try to prevent him and her from getting into the White House? Do you really think that? Do you think they're going to be pleased with your behavior? If you look up the term Arkancide, it's a combination of Arkansas and suicide, look it up and see what happened to about 100 people. Some shot themselves twice in the head. Guineith, any comments about what we've been saying or what I've been saying? Don't do it. Don't go out there. Don't stick your neck out. Don't be an idiot. Don't go to Washington. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. That doesn't mean that you can't resist these people. And in fact, I think that you should resist these people, but in quite a different manner to what you're being told by the box in the corner to do. What you need to do is you need to be ready to defend your farm, your family, and your friends if they decide to come to your door. And you need to make their decision to pick on you a very expensive one for them, okay? And I'm not going to tell anybody here what to do because I don't know your circumstances. You'll have to work out what to do on your own. And, you know, don't bother emailing me asking me what you should do, because I don't know what you should do. I don't know your circumstances. But I know my circumstances. And if anybody ever came to the door here or to the gate here and we're going to drag me off to a camp, I've said it on the show before and I'll say it again, they'd better remember their body bags because they're going to need them, either for me or for them, because I don't want to live in that sort of world. And I would rather go down fighting. Me, personally, I'm not advising anybody else what to do, okay? But that's just, you know, my husband's in heaven. By the way, I'm not suicidal. I thought I'd better point that out. My husband's in heaven, my mum's in heaven, my dad's in heaven. Some of my best friends are all passed on, you know, and so I would rather go down fighting these people. But that's me. And I've got a long history of fighting them, not necessarily physically, but legally, and, you know, through the court system. And I plan on being disagreeable to them for as long as I walk this earth. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to go out destroying property. In fact, I'm absolutely not going to go out destroying property for the very reasons that you mentioned, because I know that infrastructure takes a lot to build up. And, you know, but this is it. You've got to decide on your own what you're going to do if they come to your gate. And you have to have a plan for what you're going to do if they come to your gate. Okay? Maybe you're going to run and hide. That's okay. That's perfectly valid. That's a valid response to overwhelming tyranny. And a lot of people during World War II did that, and they survived the war. And they went on to, have children, and some of them emigrated to the US, some of them emigrated to Britain, but they survived. And that is, what you have to do is you have to survive with your morals intact and with a good conscience. That's what you have to do. Now, these people are not going to succeed in the long term with what they do, because what they're doing is many of them are openly Satanist, okay? And what they're doing is they've made deals with the devil. And the thing is that the devil has been a loser from the beginning, and anyone who makes deals with the devil is also a loser. And there's one thing that losers don't do. Losers don't win. If you, by the wisdom of God, and one thing you absolutely need to do is you absolutely need to pray. You need to pray for God's protection and God's wisdom, for him to send his angels to stand about you, to watch over you and protect you and your children and your other family members that you might have with you, Oh, my gosh. And you need to act in his wisdom to defend, like I say, your own household. And maybe if you have a close group of friends, a close network of friends that you could absolutely trust with each other's lives, that's a good thing, and you should stand up for your friends as well. And you should arrange it so that if one of your properties is coming under attack, that you can go and help your friends or your family members. And the people who have these sorts of strong networks are going to be the sort of people who survive. Most people don't have these sorts of strong family networks. And because of that, they are extremely vulnerable, because they don't have anybody around them. And so they will be able to be picked off. But the people who stand the best chance of surviving are those who, it's not even about having firearms, okay? It's the mental attitude, okay, where with a person like, with a person who has the right mental attitude to defend their property, to not be a victim. A piece of string is a deadly weapon. A plastic bag or a stick is also a deadly weapon. And, this is it. You don't, if you're in an area where you're not allowed firearms and you don't necessarily feel like you can push the law, by getting an unauthorized firearm, then it's okay, because you still have your mind. And there was a fellow, and he lived all through the communist pogroms in Soviet Russia, and his name was called Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And one thing that he said, I'm paraphrasing here, the quote is in his book, The Gulag Archipelago, somewhere, but the Gulag Archipelago is 800 pages long. So I'm not going to find the exact quote. I don't have a copy of it anyway. But I've seen it, and it said, if only some of us had placed booby traps at the foot of our stairs in our apartment buildings, if, when the jackbooted people came and were always apprehensive of entering a building because of the fear of booby traps that the residents had placed in the apartment building for them, then maybe we would have all survived. Maybe we wouldn't have gone to the camp, because it would have slowed them down enough and they would have soon had problems finding volunteers for these sorts of tasks. Now, I'm talking about a sort of situation of going into a full Soviet-level, Nazi-level communist occupation, and how people in history commentated on what they went through at their time, speaking to people in the future who might have to go through this sort of thing. And I'm not advocating that anybody do anything. I'm trying to make you think about if you're in a situation where, 3 nights a week, there's jackboots on, running up the stairs in the apartment building that you're in, and doof, 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 doof on the door, and then smashing in, and obviously screaming and people getting dragged out of their apartments. Maybe you want to remember the words of Solzhenitsyn when he said that. Maybe if somebody had put a booby trap in the stairwell, then maybe they'd be a bit less reluctant to do it next time. This is it. And it's completely foreign to how most people think. And I think that a lot of people in the United States especially are going to go through a massive amount of cognitive dissonance when they realize that Trump is really not going to be installed as the president. I'd like to continue on this topic on the other side of the break, Vincent, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Guineith and I will be right back. Guineith Isaacs is with us, and class, I hope that you recognize and hear the politeness from the instructors at USA Prepares. The way we treat each other on the radio, I'm looking right now, there is a 2001 millisecond delay between me here in Missouri and GCN. That's 1,000 milliseconds is a second. So it's over a 2-second delay, and it's even longer than that to Australia. And what you hear is the way we treat each other, whether we're on the telephone or whether we're on the radio. We're the same. We don't have different personas. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because we treat each other with respect and admiration. I'm talking about all instructors. You've never heard Dr. Norman Shealy jump on me. He's been broadcasting 3 times longer than I have. He's never jumped on me. Never in 10 years. What I'm saying is we're different. We're different from other broadcasts. Number one, we're a classroom and they're talk. We're do radio, they're talk radio. Number two, we don't have a banned callers list. We don't say to our callers, you're banned. And we don't even call them callers. We're called students and instructors. We hold them with respect. And because the tone is set right here by the instructors, no profanity, make sure that you're prepared for the broadcast, make sure you have truth in what you say and you can back it up. Because of that, we don't have these callers that get banned from other talk shows. Isn't that interesting? I just thought you might want to see what I see. I don't like listening to other broadcasts. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. It's so many broadcasts, and I'm not talking about Genesis Communications Network. There are very few broadcasters whom I respect. Very, 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 very few. You can probably count them on a couple fingers. Guineith, back to you.
Okay. What I was saying about, what you need to do if they come to your door, you need to make their participation expensive for them. Is ultimately what it boils down to. And what that's going to mean is going to vary from place to place and from time to time. And, certain people locally here have had it made clear to them that if they continue to harass me, they're going to get sued, meaning this is going to end up in the court system. That was back in the days when we had a court system. I think that I'm I've made my point that they're not welcome here. And they're not welcome here because they're a bunch of jackbooted thugs. I'm talking about the local blue team. And, you know, I'm actually really glad that in the last year to 6 months that they have become internationally known as a gang of jackbooted thugs, meaning the Victoria Police. I'm really glad that they've gained such an international reputation for the way that they do their job. And, you know, this is it. Karma comes and gets you. And, you know, karma doesn't even necessarily mean a human being is involved in the process, because, you know, it comes from heaven. It comes from God. God sees and God knows. And I've got a message for every person who puts on the jackboots and thinks that they can go standing on people's necks and get away with it. God's watching you. God is watching you. And he sees what you're doing, and he has got a very, very good memory, a very long memory, and he's not going to let you get away with it forever, because every one of us, at the end of our lives, I was having this discussion with my son the other day, and I said, every one of us at the end of our lives, we have to face death. And after we face death, we have to face God. And you have to live your life well on this earth, so that on that day, when you're standing before the throne of the Almighty, you can do so with a good conscience. Because you don't want to be standing there having treated everybody else around you badly.
You know, Guineith, what you're saying about making it expensive for them, I've often wondered about World War II and how the socialists, the Nazi party, rounded up people. They knew. The people knew that 5 blocks away, people were being rounded up. They knew it. The people who were, you know, the general public in Nazi Germany, they supported Adolf Hitler. They liked the fact that he created jobs, that he was building a war machine. They turned their back on those who were being arrested and murdered and sent to concentration camps. And if you watch the assigned homework called Judgment at Nuremberg, you will find out that people denied. We didn't know. We didn't know that those people in boxcars hauled off like cattle were going to their extermination. We didn't know that. We didn't know that ash coming from the chimney used to be people who were alive a couple minutes before. We didn't know that. So the people in Germany turned their back on what was happening, in my opinion. And at the end of the Nuremberg trials, people were sentenced to life imprisonment, like these judges who committed these heinous crimes of having people sterilized. They didn't actually do the sterilization. Doctors did that. They committed the crimes during surgery. But the judges committed the crimes of sentencing these people for sterilization and forced incarceration at concentration camps and forced executions. And so the judges were sentenced to life imprisonment. And guess what happened? Not one of them completed life imprisonment. They were let out. Now, who would let them out? Well, that would be the German political system. So what they do is they take care of their own. And do you think it's going to be any different now? Also, Guineith, you mentioned making participation expensive. You know, people who commit these heinous crimes. Well, I've often thought about why didn't these people who were rounded up, they were rounded up 5 blocks away, 4 blocks away. Pretty soon they're going to be on our block. Why didn't, well, their guns were registered. So once they were registered in Nazi Germany, they were confiscated. We know that that's how that works. It's only going to be registration. Don't worry about it. We just want to make sure criminals don't have these guns. Then they take all the guns. So you can't fight back too easily. But then I wondered, what about like pitchforks and kitchen knives and things like that? How come when 3 guys or 4 guys were marching up the stairs in these apartments, how come 10 guys didn't get together and throw them down the stairs and slice them up and throw them in the street? Why? Meaning, throw the Nazis in the street. Slice them up. Why? Because people don't work together. That's why. But the police do. When the police pull somebody over, it's not 1 car, it's like 3 or 4 cars, right? They work together. The problem is we don't work together. That's the problem with America. But that's also a good thing. Because that means we don't have a head running the resistance. Like in World War II France. The French resistance. You have to admire those guys. They drove the Nazis crazy. It was a real problem. It was a full-time job trying to figure out who the French resistance happened to be. Guineith?
Well, it's like this. A number of years ago, when my husband was young, he had to do with some resistance-type people who will remain unnamed. But, I've said before, my husband was a lifelong gangster, and he had a lot of gangster buddies, and he had them in various places. And one thing that they said was, listen, you've got to understand that people think that our organisation is this big thing, but what they don't realise is that our organisation is that guy over there ploughing his field who happens to have a revolver tucked in his belt. So the enemy drives past and he pulls out his revolver and shoots someone and then tucks the revolver back into his belt and keeps on ploughing his field. So that's the one thing that particular enemy never understood, was that they were fighting the guy ploughing his field. They thought that they were looking for some big leader somewhere, but it was never like that. And obviously I'm not going to name that organisation. But like I said, I've made no secret of the fact that my husband was a gangster. He was involved in a number of underworld organisations all over the world. And this was just one of them. And people have to, the most important thing in a resistance battle, like I said, if you can obtain firearms, that's great. That's great. But if you can't, the most important thing is your mind. Because you can have a firearm and you can know how it works. You can know where the safety is. But at the end of the day, if you are unable to pull that trigger when that moment counts, then you've got a very expensive club. And you probably won't even be able to use it as a club. And probably it would be more, how can I say it? It would be more useful for you to learn hand-to-hand combat skills, martial arts type, for instance, judo or karate or aikido, and just to learn the combat skills without the weapon, and then that's something that can never ever be taken from you. You know, this is it. I'm only saying this because I know the history of what comes next down this particular track. And I'm trying to give the class the best chance possible of being alive at the other end of it. So I don't want to go to war. But if I do have to go to war, I'm going to be utterly forced into it. I'm going to consider that there is no other way out other than for me to go to war. But if I do, as is said in the New Zealand national anthem, I am a New Zealander, although I live in Australia, and I'm also an Australian as well. I'm a dual national. It says in the New Zealand national anthem, but should foes assail our coast, make us then a mighty host. God defend New Zealand. You know, it says, may our mountains ever be freedom's ramparts on the sea. Make us faithful unto thee. God defend New Zealand. And then this is the national anthem of that country, of New Zealand. But I like that line. Should foes assail our coast, make us a mighty host, make us a great army to defeat them, because the alternative is death, slavery, torture, concentration camps, millions of dead people, crematorium gas chambers being built, and your friends hovering over you as a cloud of ash at the end of the day. Given a choice between that and going into a resistance movement, and that a resistance movement, not a big thing that's led by a single leader, but by you and maybe a group of friends and family members just seeking to stop the people who think they run the show from grabbing your farm. That's ultimately the only way that this thing will be defeated. And if you don't do that, the jackboots are going to come down your driveway. They're going to drag you out of your house. You're going to get sent to a camp, or you're going to be tortured and shot, and you're going to be a mental wreck at the end of it. Go and read the book 1984. It's still there. It's still available on Amazon. Go and buy it while you can, because and learn the lesson from it. Learn what George Orwell was saying. He was one of the jackboots. You know, he was a communist. He was a socialist, and he was working for the British Secret Service. You know, for learning how to be a jackboot for them. You know, for the day that would come when they would become a socialist dictatorship, which England now is. You know, I almost don't even know what to say. But you're going to have to look after yourselves. You're going to have to prepare your mind to go to war. And most people will not be able to do it. But even if you're a woman, I'm a woman. But I've prepared my mind, and I've had a lot of circumstances happen in my own life that have had epigenetic triggers. And I've got a past life history of being of being a pirate and a highwayman and all that. And it doesn't matter. I had to prepare my mind to survive in order to survive even just the things that I've been through in this life. And I've never killed anyone in this life. I hope I never have to kill anyone in this life. But if I had to go to war to defend this farm, I most certainly would. Does that make sense, Vincent?
Yeah, and as you're saying it, I was thinking at this very moment, if we're talking about the French resistance of today, we don't even know exactly who we would be resisting against, in my opinion. There's so many factions. But what we are talking about is defending our own property from theft. That's one of the things that we're talking about. So, class, imagine, it gets back to Combat, the television series from the 1960s. You need to watch it. I've assigned it as homework many, many, many times. And in it, you will see that farmhouses are blown up. City houses are blown up. The enemy comes in, bashes down the door, sets up arms, and the firefight begins. And your windows get shot out, your doors get broken down, your chimneys get blown up, your house gets a hand grenade tossed in, gets blown up, set on fire. What would you do? What would you do? Would you allow that to happen? What if you lived in a neighborhood? What if you lived in a farm? What if you lived in an apartment? So class, tomorrow, hour number 1, Rich Sheben will be solo. Hour number 2, I'm going to connect, and I will be talking about tips from my unfinished, unorganized, unpublished, not available for sale book. I think you might find it quite interesting. I'm going to tell you about some car problems and what we've learned how to fix them for free. Free repairs. And just a little elbow grease. And I want to comment about a couple other things. Every once in a while I get comments about the broadcast. People tell me what to say. Well, I really appreciate them telling me what to say, and I appreciate them telling me what I'm doing wrong, and I appreciate all the advice and counsel they have for me. I just have a couple comments. Well, number 1, since you know so much, why don't you have your own broadcast? It's real easy. All you have to do is prepare for hours in advance. You have to show up and be on time, and you have to build your audience based on fact. Content matters. So since you all know so much, why don't you do it? Why don't you build your own show? Or if you don't have the time to do that, how about this? It only takes maybe, let's say if you broadcast 2 hours a day, it probably only takes 30 hours a week. Okay? Preparation plus broadcast time. It's not too much, right? You all can do that. And if you don't have the time to do that, how about this? Why don't you give us a call? I'll put you on the air. If you've got something to say and it's truthful and you're polite and you don't use profanity, I'll put you on the air. We'll even pay for the call, 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. What I'm telling you is put up or shut up. I don't normally talk like that, but I mean it. And I was looking at some headlines on Daily Mail, and Guineith mentioned Rome. Rome's burning. It just happens to be 2021 in the United States of America. Headlines, quote, Anderson Cooper opens up about why being gay is one of the blessings of his life. It made me a better person. It made me a better reporter, end quote. Anderson the Homo Cooper, son of Gloria Vanderbilt, of the Vanderbilt fortune. So we have Ellen the Degenerate. We have Anderson Homo Cooper, both homos, and they are in the limelight in the mainstream media. People think they are great. Let me tell you what, homosexuality is perverted. It's sick. And here we have these degenerates being put up on platforms as these people are great. These people are disgusting. So, if you don't think we're going down, that's just 2 examples, Ellen the Degenerate and Anderson the Homo, giving you information. And they've got way more followers than we do. Way more. At least that's what's purported. Purported with a P. It's sick. It's sick. We're going down. I don't think we can fix it. I think the answer is really simple. Forget the demonstrations. Just prepare to defend your property, your home, your castle from the invasion, from whoever it happens to be. And I'm really not even sure who that is. I'm really not sure. And so here is the thought for today. What would the king do? So think of the other team, whoever they happen to be, as the king. Is the king worried about your health, your welfare, COVID-19? Or is the king worried about staying in his castle or her castle? And there are lots of kings. There are local kings, local mayors, local sheriffs, local councilmen. Then you have the counties, they have theirs, and then you have the states, and then you have Washington. All these kings, big kings and little kings, and they don't want to live in trailer homes. They don't want to worry about what's going to be for the meal next because the cupboard's empty. They want what you have. And what are you going to do about it? So think like, what would the king do to you? Guineith? Do you think that makes sense?
Well, yeah. I think that's exactly what I've been saying. And the other thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you are producing enough food in your little castle to make sure that, you and yours are fed. You need to make sure that you have your own water supply and electrical supply, all of the above. But like I say, the most important thing is your mind. You need to have your own mind, and you need to get into the habit, as Gerald Celente says, of thinking for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think that if that could be the takeaway message of my whole career here on USA Prepares, it would be stand up for yourself, think for yourself, look after your own. Does that make sense?
And tomorrow I'm going to give you some tips after Rich Sheban's hour. And then on Friday, Kathy's going to interview me about how to repair your appliances. Now, why is that important? Because, class, you're on your own. That's why it's important. So we can be talking about politics, or we can be talking about what you can do. Guineith told you what you do. You need to protect your castle. Guineith, thank you so much for being with us.